Today, we're going to dive into one of the most explosive, game-changing periods in all of history. Seriously, this is the story of how a few radical ideas lit a fuse that completely redrew the map of the world, creating the very nations we live in today. So, let's get right into it.
So let me just start by asking you this. How would you build an entire country? I mean, really, from scratch. Not inheriting a kingdom that's been around for centuries, but building one based on a brand new idea. Where do you even begin? Well, that's the exact problem a bunch of rebels and thinkers faced a few hundred years ago, and believe me, their answers changed everything.
To really get how wild their ideas were, you have to picture the world they were living in. Back in the 15th to 17th centuries, the world was basically a patchwork of empires and kingdoms. Your identity wasn't about being, say, French or German. It was about being a subject of a specific king or queen. That was it. And how did these kings hold on to all that power? Well, they had a pretty powerful idea on their side, the divine right theory. The logic was simple, but wow, was it effective. A king's power came directly from God, not from the people. That means he answered to nobody on earth. This idea was the absolute bedrock of the old world.
But then, all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, a few small colonies decided to chip away at that very foundation, and that started a chain reaction. See, 13 British colonies in North America started to think the unthinkable. What if we don't actually need a king at all?
That tension just boiled over into open rebellion. And one of the most famous examples, of course, was the Boston Tea Party. Colonists were furious about taxes being slapped on them by a king thousands of miles away. So they disguised themselves, snuck onto British ships, and dumped 340 crates of tea right into the harbor. Now, this wasn't really about the tea, It was a loud and clear message: we will not be ruled without our say.
Okay, so if you're going to fight a war against the mighty British Empire, you're going to need a leader. And the colonists found one in George Washington. He wasn't some fancy European general. He was a Virginian planter with a bit of military experience. But he had the skill and, frankly, the guts to turn a ragtag army of farmers into a real fighting force that could actually take on a global superpower.
And this right here, this is the monumental result. On July 4th, 1776, the colonies made it official. We are free. After years of brutal war, they won. They created a new nation, the United States of America, and the world's first formal constitution. And here's the really crucial part. They proved that a country could be built not on who your father was, but on the radical ideas of liberty and government by the people.
That American success story sent shockwaves across the Atlantic, and in France, people were paying very close attention. A lot of French soldiers had actually fought alongside the Americans, so when they came home, they were buzzing with these new ideas, asking themselves, hey, if the Americans can kick out their king, why can't we?
And this chart, wow, this tells you everything you need to know about the problem in France. Society was split into three groups or estates. The first two, the church leaders and the nobles, made up a tiny 3% of the population. Yet they had all the land, all the power, and paid basically zero taxes. The other 97%, everyone else, had to pay for everything. You can see how that's just a disaster waiting to happen.
All this anger was being fueled by these powerful new ideas from French thinkers. Philosophers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau were arguing that the whole system was just wrong, and this quote, it just nails it. Humans are born free, but society, with its kings and its rigid classes, puts them in chains. I mean, think about that. That's not just a complaint, that's a call to action.
And on July 14th, 1789, all that anger and inspiration finally exploded. A huge crowd in Paris stormed the Bastille, which was this old medieval fortress being used as a prison. It was the ultimate symbol of the king's tyrannical power. Tearing it down brick by brick was the symbolic start of the French Revolution. Now, the French Revolution was way more chaotic and bloody than the American one, but its impact was absolutely immense. It completely wiped out the old feudal system, it put the powerful church under the control of the state, and, most importantly, it gave the world the electrifying ideals of liberty, equality, and brotherhood. That phrase would become a rallying cry for people all over the world. All right, so let's track how these ideas kept evolving. These revolutions didn't just tear down old kingdoms. They helped build a powerful new idea that would totally define the next 100 years.
And that big idea was nationalism. Think about it. Before, your loyalty was to a kin. Now, people started to believe their loyalty should be to their nation. a group of people who spoke the same language, shared a culture, shared a history, and this powerful new idea argued that these nations of people deserve to have their very own independent countries.
So let's see this new force of nationalism in action. For centuries, the places we now call Italy and Germany, well, they didn't really exist as countries. They were just these fragmented collections of little states. Nationalism is the force that would hammer them into the powerful nations we know today.
This map just shows the challenge perfectly. Take a look at Italy before the 1860s. It's not one country. It's a chaotic jumble of different kingdoms, states controlled by the Pope, and territories run by foreign powers like Austria. One Italian patriot at the time famously said Italy wasn't a nation, it was just a geographical expression.
So how do you turn that patchwork into a country? Turns out it took a couple of different kinds of leaders. On one side, you had the thinker, a guy named Joseph Mazzini. He was a writer who basically inspired an entire generation with the dream of a united Italy through his Young Italy movement. And on the other side, you had the fighter, Giuseppe Garibaldi. He was the soldier who actually put together an army, the Red Shirts, and went out and conquered the land needed to unite the country.
A really similar story played out in Germany, and the main architect of its unification was this guy, Otto von Bismarck. He was the chief minister of Prussia, which was the most powerful German state, and he was an absolute master of political strategy. He was completely determined to create a single, unified German empire. In this quote, this tells you everything you need to know about his method. Bismarck had zero time for debates and voting. He famously said that the great questions of the day wouldn't be settled with speeches, but with blood and steel. He meant war and industrial power.
And his plan was like a ruthless game of chess. First, he built Prussia's army into an unstoppable machine. Second, he intentionally started a war with Austria just to kick them out of German affairs for good. And third, he cleverly provoked a war with France because he knew that a common enemy would make all the southern German states rally to his side. And you know what? It worked perfectly.
So let's just step back for a second and look at the incredible chain reaction we just followed. It all started with an idea about freedom in America and ended with a completely new map of Europe.
This timeline really shows you that domino effect. You can see it right here. First, 1776. The American Revolution proves a nation can be born from an idea. Then, boom, 1789. The French Revolution supercharges those ideas with liberty and equality. That gives birth to nationalism, which spreads like wildfire and leads directly to the creation of Italy and Germany by 1871. One thing led directly to the next.
The big takeaway here is just how incredibly fast all of this happened. We're talking less than 100 years. The world went from being dominated by kings and queens for centuries to a world of nation-states, all set in motion by a chain reaction that started with a few angry colonists in America. And that leaves us with one final thing to think about. We've talked about three huge world-changing ideas: liberty, equality, and nationalism. So I'll leave you with this question. Which one of those do you think is still shaping our world the most today? It's something to think about as we watch history continue to unfold all around us. Thanks for watching.